As consumers, when we go to the supermarket, it's mainly to buy the foods we need, which we then bring home to prep, cook, and eat. But there's more to food than meets the eye. When we buy produce from a supermarket, we prioritize purchases based on a variety of factors. For instance, some shoppers will focus on price, others on quality, or perhaps whether it's organic. Considering how easy it is to access foods today, one might overlook the potential health and environmental impacts such purchases may entail. For instance, where is our food grown? How long did it take to travel to reach the supermarket? How was it grown? Today, we will be touring Sunny Supermarket located at Finch and Leslie Street to have a closer look at and answer some of these questions. Let's head in. As I walk into the supermarket, I'm greeted by the vibrant colors and smells of fruits and vegetables. One of the first things I notice that sets this supermarket apart from others is the variety of Asian produce. For instance, they have bok choy, yu choy, and Chinese broccoli to name a few. I find that these types of vegetables are scarce, if at all available, when shopping at other places such as Loblaws, No Frills, or Food Basics. As a Chinese Canadian, it's nice to be able to find and purchase foods from my culture not too far from where I live. However, I noticed many of the fruits and vegetables here at the supermarket are not currently in season. So how did it get here? While the expansion of global trade and importation of food has granted us access to a variety of foods regardless of season, but it comes at a cost to both environment and price. According to the OPIRG, food miles refers to the distance between where the food is produced and where it is consumed. I decided to take a look at the food miles of some of the produce here at the store. But as I walked around, I noticed that many of the signs don't tell me where it was produced. What's more, several of the foods don't have any labels on them or boxes underneath the stalls that indicate where it came from. This made me realize how alienated I am from my food, being unable to even track down where it was grown, let alone how it was grown. Luckily, there were several products that did have a place of origin labeled. I found strawberries originating from Mexico, about 3,624 kilometers away, garlic that came all the way from China, some 9,380 kilometers away, and even grapes from as far as South Africa, which is about 15,174 kilometers away from Canada. Considering the hundreds of tons of cargo carried during transport and the long distances traveled, the amount of carbon emissions produced from transport is immense. For instance, ships on average release 10 grams of CO2 per ton of cargo per kilometer. Trucks release 59 grams of CO2 per ton per kilometer, and aircrafts release 470 grams of CO2 per ton per kilometer. This is not including the carbon emissions released and fuel required to manufacture and apply pesticides and fertilizers, to produce and grow these foods large scale, and process them, which, as you can see from this graph, contributes even more to carbon emissions than transport does. Before, I rarely ever looked at the labels to see where my food came from, instead focusing on price and convenience. I never realized how far some of the foods originated and the environmental consequences of being able to access them. Global trade has resulted in an increase in food miles over the past few decades and encourages large-scale production of food, which has huge environmental implications. The heavy reliance of fossil fuels in our food system also affects the price of food. As stated by the OPIRG, if oil prices rise, so too do food prices. Natural gas, gasoline, and diesel is used at nearly every stage of the food system but are finite resources. The over-reliance on such fuel not only harms the environment but also places the future of food security in jeopardy. It's simply not sustainable in the long term. But what can we do as consumers to reduce our carbon footprint when purchasing produce from the supermarket? Well, one option is to buy local and in season. You could also buy organic. This ensures that both transport and production emissions are limited compared to buying foods that were grown across the globe with heavy use of pesticides and fertilizers. This brings us to the next point. A growing issue with produce bought at the supermarket is the use of synthetic chemicals. Pesticides are widely used on crops to kill insects, molds, fungi, and rodents. It may also be applied to protect foods from bruising and spoiling. Furthermore, produce may be waxed with fungicides, bactericides, coloring agents, and ripening inhibitors to make it look fresh and last longer. These chemicals chemicals can accumulate in the body and are linked to diseases including neurological problems, reproductive problems, brain and lung cancer, as well as immune system suppression. Some of the most contaminated foods on the market include peaches, apples, bell peppers, celery, nectarines, and many more. These are considered more contaminated compared to other fruits and vegetables due to having a thin protective outer layer or peel. On the other hand, foods such as onions, avocados, pineapples, and mangoes are considered least contaminated. These fruits and vegetables have a more hardy and thick outer layer, which protects the parts we do eat from being heavily contaminated with synthetic chemicals. Walking down the aisle of fruits, I found a bag of oranges with the following label regarding the use of synthetic chemicals and wax to maintain freshness. Had the label not been there, I would never have known. In fact, as a consumer, it's impossible to tell at a glance whether or not a product has been chemically treated unless there is a sign or label. So what can we do as consumers to make healthier choices and limit exposure to synthetic chemicals? Well, one option is to buy organic whenever possible. Products certified as organic are not grown with pesticides, artificial fertilizers, or growth regulators, thus reducing exposure to chemicals. Another option is to grow your own produce, though of course this isn't always feasible depending on where you live. Perhaps the easiest way to reduce exposure to synthetic chemicals is to wash fruits and vegetables thoroughly and/or peel them. This removes the wax and excess chemical residue on the surface, but sacrifices some nutritional value. Another interesting observation I made as I walked through the produce aisle are the few vegetables and fruits placed underneath the stalls. Before, I never took notice of them, as I focused on the appealing foods stacked at the top. But upon closer inspection, I realized that these fruits and vegetables underneath are discounted and don't look quite as appealing or fresh as the ones above, with bruises, dents, scrapes, and discoloration. Many of these products are probably nearing the end of their shelf life. I wonder how many people purchase the ones below the stalls. The cost of food can be high for many people, and these provide a source of food at a more affordable and discounted price. However, we as consumers often buy foods that look good. If it doesn't look good, it's perceived as bad and not worth buying even when it hasn't gone bad and is still perfectly fit for consumption. I wonder, how much of these subpar or about to expire foods go bad before they are even bought? I ended up finding a sealed package of fruits that had indeed started growing mold on its surface. In addition, there were several other packages of fruits under the stalls that looked like they were going bad. I wonder how much food is wasted just sitting below stalls, with the grocery store being unable to sell all of it. Is there a better alternative to getting rid of perishable foods rather than discounting them and placing them out of sight? What other ways are there to reduce food waste in general? A report by the Toronto Environmental Alliance estimates that about 40% of the 500,000 ton of garbage sent to landfills every year is organic material that could have been composted. When food waste ends up in landfills, it decomposes and produces methane gas, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. The biggest culprits for this are businesses, retailers, and industries. But despite the depressing data, it's not all bad news. Some grocers are working with organizations such as Leftovers to donate and deliver perishable foods to places that need them, like food banks, in an effort to reduce food waste. There is also an increasing use of technology being applied to reduce food waste. An example of this is an app known as Flash Food. Working in partnership with groceries and supermarkets, Flash Food is essentially the discount food rack on your cell phone and is a means for grocery stores and food vendors to resell their surplus food before it is thrown out. On the app, you can browse for deals, purchase the food, and then head to the store at any time of day to pick it up. This allows food to be bought without it waiting around to go bad like the ones below the stalls at Sunny Supermarket. It's an affordable and convenient way to purchase food, all the while reducing food waste. In summary, to reduce your carbon footprint and make more health-conscious choices when purchasing produce from the supermarket, you can wash and/or peel fruits and vegetables, buy organic produce whenever possible, buy local and in season, and perhaps consider using apps such as Flash Food to save money and reduce food waste. That concludes this presentation and our tour of Sunny Supermarket. Thank you for listening.